Welcome back to the Press Club, and thank you very much for joining us. For those of you who have tuned us in to whatever part of your house that you are in, we really appreciate it as you take the time to listen to us provide our own take on the news happenings for the past week. As I said, I'm joined by Maria Fontenelle, 1000 Words Media. And Maria, your top story for the past week, as you said, was the deaths. I don't want to say the killings, because a lot of them were not suspicious, and some of them were just unfortunate circumstances as well.
But it's interesting. Choice earlier on did kind of a street poll, the voice box on the street, and people kept talking about the crime, and we have to tamp down the crime. 5 bodies are too much, etc. But they failed. I don't think people listen properly. It just shows people claim the media always report bad news, but they themselves have an expectation, and they take that into listening to the news. A lot of the deaths were not suspicious. One was a snake bite.
Right.
One seemed to have been a heart attack, or one was a drowning, etc. One, I think, has not been determined as yet.
Yeah,
Yeah, and of course, unfortunately, the latest one, there is one other person who was found, who it does seem was attacked. There are signs of the person having been attacked, and signs of violence on the body. So clearly that one seems to be, something shady going on there. We can't say as yet because the body was just found and the police have to do their work. But Simone Leandra from Bizet, 40-something-year-old, 43-year-old woman, seemed to have been attacked. Her family knew she was missing by the time they went to look for her.
Yes.
They found her body, her children found her body. And 6 for the year, but then one more, one other shooting early Friday morning. That was a young man who was said to be trying to commit a robbery, and he was shot by the police. So that one is definitely a killing, but of course a judicial killing. I think a second judicial killing for the year, just in January.
Well, we have to wait to see, the details that come out of it, from the investigation. We always say once it's the police, they have good cause. Yeah, and the police will not act without good cause. It's excusable without even knowing the circumstances. We tend to believe all the time that this is the case. Yeah. But, sometimes it's not. I'm not saying that this case was not.
Well, sadly in St. Lucia, we don't have a strongly entrenched culture of actually doing inquiries that actually solid and that give results, that the public know the results, the public know what's happening throughout, the public is informed, and whatever happens, action is taken on the recommendations or the conclusions. We don't have that in St. Lucia, unfortunately. So we are left to believe that any killing by the police, and of course, if you say otherwise, if you even suggest otherwise, I mean, we don't have evidence that it wasn't justified. But then how can we say for sure it's justified without them giving us the information to say, okay, this is what happened, these are the witnesses, this is the evidence that was taken at the scene to show, yes, this person had a gun, yes, they were doing X, Y, Z. But at the same time, we are left to assume the police, because they are police officers, they are right and that there are no bad characters or no, negative persons within the police force.
Yeah, and all killing is sad, especially the one that happened Friday. Where this young lady, she was returning home from a meeting.
Yes.
From the accounts that I've received, and I was on the scene Friday morning.
Okay.
So 10 o'clock at night, she was dropped off, and she was making her way home. And the family did not return. She never returned. So the family went in search of her early in the morning and found her body in a shallow grave kind of structure, her legs tied.
Yeah.
And bleeding from a part of her body. Who did it? No one can tell us yet. But I'm sure the person who did it knows who he or she is, or the people who did it. So it's just unfortunate, and it just speaks to how wicked some people can be.
Yeah.
I mean, for whatever reason they targeted her. 47-year-old. Everybody in the community says, she did not deserve it. This woman did not deserve it. She was such a community person, very nice to everyone in the community. I'm not saying that anyone who meets an untimely death deserves it, but there are some people,
the death just seemed particularly unfair.
Right.
Given that they had so much to give and nobody that they have actually done anything negative to.
Yes. And those deaths, they reach down into your inner recesses, and say, boy, how could
we act like that, which is kind of sad, because somebody mentioned, I remember when there was a case last year and there was a candlelight vigil held, and they said, well, why hold a candlelight vigil for one, not for the other? But unfortunately, as human beings, we take it to heart a little more when we see, you know, there's certain profiles,
Right.
young person or female or somebody who is apparently very nice and not having done anything, you know, bad, as we would say. When there are young men who are killed who have been on the wrong path, people are like, you know, yeah, another one. Not realizing, of course, these are also people who have families
Right,
who grieve for
exactly.
them, and it's also an impact on the community, and we have to, whether it's the police or somebody else, we also have to call for justice, because whatever the case, whenever there's a killing that goes without a protest on our part, then today, tomorrow, it could be you or I who are killed without a protest from the public. But hopefully we get information from there are quite a few unsolved murders though when it comes to women, so hopefully this one will be solved.
I think the police have a pretty good track record in solving, you know, crimes. You know, some of them go unsolved, as you said, it's true. But then I think that the track record is pretty good of the number of crimes, murders that they solved last year.
Yeah.
A good few were solved out of the many that we had.
And last year as well, I think the rate of murder was also down last year from the previous year. So that's definitely is a plus. And despite the year being early and we've seen, you know, these incidences, I think we could still go through the year peacefully, you know, without as many, you know, that high rate of crime as we had before.
I hope so. I hope so.
Yeah, thoughts of peace.
Let's think peace. Well, my top story, of course, was the sexual abuse story that came through DBS earlier in the week, where a grandfather was accused of molesting his granddaughter, or some, you know, thing to that effect. And every time I hear those stories, I get angry. You know, because you're in a position where you're supposed to be taking care, being responsible for the young ones, grooming them, raising them, talking to them about abuse, talking to them about the good touch and bad touch, as we had a campaign some time ago, talking to them of, you know, situations that they should avoid to find themselves victims. You know, but then you taking advantage of your flesh and blood.
Violating them, you know? Violating that trust.
And I had a couple of victim advocates on my show on Newsmaker Live this week, and they were just speaking about it.
That's quite an interesting show.
Yeah, one gentleman called. One gentleman called, and he said that he is going through it right now, and the police are not very helpful, not acting very speedily. And I reassured him that, you know, sometimes it takes time, and I got to meet him on Thursday, the day after, you know, coincidentally, you know, and he was just giving me the story. And it's just sad, you know, how some people in authority, if what he says, you know, is exactly how it transpired, how lightly they take those things, you know, that
I don't know whether it's lightly or whether, I don't know if they take it lightly. They may take it seriously, but they may take it in the wrong way. In that we also again have this culture where children are supposed to be seen, not heard. You'd believe an adult above a child. Right. So children lie, or if you know an adult,
but that's
who you believe
lightly, though. I mean,
if you believe, no, but you take it seriously. The child is
if a child brings a complaint to you and you insinuate or intimate that the child is lying. I mean, that's not taking the child seriously. A serious charge like that of sexual abuse
I don't think we understand
by a family member. You know, it's not.
We have so much allegations against so many people.
And a file
when we talk
missing.
When we talk about the Senator Jazz, that's going to come up again. Let's not even go there with me. But we have so many allegations. Senators have to understand. People insult young women all the time, and they talk about, oh, this young child, she's having sex all over the place, and she has no morals. She's wearing. But
she's
why
loose,
is
she's
it?
Slack, she this, she
why
that.
is it? At you looking at a child who's 9, who's 13, and saying she's into having sex, and you blame her. But why was she born with sex on her mind? Who brought her up? Right? What are the influences that caused her at that early age to be acting like that?
Who
when you talk
abused
about a grandfather, a father, an uncle, a brother abusing a child, that destroys you, you know. When you finish, I mean, your body might as well not be anything worth anything. That's what the girls act like. The body is just, again, like people say, like a piece of chicken, breast, thighs, and that's it. You know, just give them the breast and thighs, they eat it and they're gone. Because you don't see the value in yourself. Because from early, the men who's supposed to be showing you value in your life, your father, your brother, your uncle, your teacher, are the ones abusing you. And they're showing you that you're worth nothing, that they could just take it from you regardless. And there's nobody else who will take your side, take your stand, and support you.
And that is so sad. I mean, honestly, it really angers me when I hear these stories, and the response to them as well, you know, that people not taking it very seriously. Also, you know, you tell me you have a serious case like that, and the gentleman is like, you know, he has been all over, he has been to this authority and that authority, and they're telling him that the file is missing, or the file never reached. You know, all these things, that's slackness. And I think the police have a responsibility as well to investigate those things, and the people who are responsible for the vulnerable person unit, or who work in there as well should be pulled up, and they should be people who are of a higher level, you know, have a higher moral responsibility and sensitive as well.
Maybe they need to undergo some training, or they need to be
a lot of training. I'm telling you, I was there at one point. I went there for, you know, a particular for a reason. I went there to accompany someone, and it's a vulnerable person unit, and there was a charge, you know, against that person, and there were, you know, some females within that unit. You know, they were walking they're just casual and stuff, touching each other's butts and stuff like that. In that unit, when you have people who might have been victims there in that common area, and I found that so inappropriate, you know, that you're in a vulnerable person's unit, you don't know what's going on through the people, the people's minds that you're dealing with, but then you act in such a flippant manner, you know, like, and if exactly, one, there was no professionalism. The second thing is, if they were sensitive to what kind of effect abuse has on people, then they would act in a more responsible fashion as well. So these are things that we have to look at as a society.
See somebody walking in there and seeing that kind of, as you said, a flippant attitude, and saying, you know what, these people can't help me.
Exactly.
And walking out again.
Exactly.
Because they can't do anything for you.
You know.
But I noticed from what Velika mentioned that they would be doing a new victims hotline in St. Lucia.
Right, and I think Lime has come on board with that. They also have this big program on the 14th, Valentine's Day, 14th of February, 1 billion rising. Yeah, it's a global
stand against violence against women.
Yes, it's a global thing, you know, so St. Lucia is going to be a part of it at the Derek Walcott Square, 12 to 5, I think it is. And they have a group, ProSafe, where they advocate on behalf of victims of abuse, sexual abuse especially.
I think the women have to be commended, because they have come out and not just advocated, but said, you know, honestly, we have been victims as well, so we understand. And maybe that's the kind of person you need in there. I mean, to me, you don't have to be a victim to understand. Sometimes you just have to be a human and stop and think, you know, what if it were myself, my child? What would cause me to do that in the first place? Maybe I wouldn't do that, but what are the influences that this person have that I didn't have? Some of us are blessed and we don't realize it. We grew up in a safe environment, and we don't appreciate that not everybody has that. Some children grow up in a one-bedroom house with siblings and parents, one on top of the other on the same bed, right? And then that situation alone, regardless of morals, give rise to children seeing things they shouldn't see.
Right, exactly.
And being exposed to things that put their mind into a sexual pathway earlier than it should be.
Yeah, so because it's okay. You see it happening all the time, and it's natural to you. You see, you know, you live in this one-room shack, where you see mommy and daddy, you know, mommy and
so you go to school and you try and make a child in your school do it as well.
You know, so that's what you see. So they're disaffected as a result of it. You know, they're immune to it, if I'm to use that term.
And nobody explains to them, I mean, what it is, why the parents doing it, is it adults, is it children, what's behind it. So they go again, like anything else, you know, you repeat the behaviors that you see your parents do.
Right, exactly.
And again, another area of sensitivity, teachers sometimes have to be a bit more sensitive and realize, I find too many teachers accuse children of being like unretrievably bad. To me, a child in school at that age, everybody has a hope. Especially at that age.
At that age, you just form your character.
You're telling the child you're going to end up in bodily, you're going to end up being a rapist, XYZ. Try and understand what's causing that. Try and help the child. I talk to the parent. If the parent cannot help, because oftentimes if the parent is the source of the problem, they can't help. If they can't help, do you leave it there and say, wash your hands, this child is not my concern? That child may be in your house tomorrow raping you.
Yeah, and
or do you take further action and try to get something
done? The sex education as well, you know, is lacking. What passes for sex education in our schools is nothing. I mean, the children know more. The children know more than we do, I
Parents,
mean,
I remember there was a move recently to change the sex education curriculum, and parents were objecting that's going to make the children have sex.
but they're having
Excuse me,
sex.
we have the videotapes that's on YouTube.
Yeah, they're having sex
That
all
will
over.
have to
I mean,
teach them to be safe, teach them to understand what the point is of sex. Why would you have an urge to do these things, regardless of whether you're in school or in the toilet? Where's the urge coming from? Why are you expressing it, and what can you do to control it? Can you control it? And if you can't control it, what can you do to protect yourself and others around you?
yeah, and I admire my wife. You know, she used to be a health and family life teacher. You know, and she was very close with her students, and they'd talk about everything. That's one thing about her.
Hey,
She'll discuss.
She's not a teacher anymore, right?
She's not a teacher
Okay,
anymore.
because they
No.
can fire her now that you're saying.
No, well,
Then
it's not-
basically, she should have been teaching them something of the curriculum.
No, well, I mean, they talk about it, and if they're
Yeah.
comfortable with you enough, they will open up and tell you stuff that, you know, just this week we're discussing, you know, that same topic as well,
Yeah.
and just some of the things that they tell you, and the children know so much what they do, you
They
know.
may not know, but they certainly have an opinion on it.
Well, no,
Yeah.
they know a lot too about what they do, you know,
Okay.
and stuff, and you
A
know,
little too
steps that
much.
they take that
Yeah.
are not prescribed, really. And you know, some of it can be really dangerous, and you, as a teacher, has to guide them. But the parents
pay
have,
enough.
yeah, the parents too have a great responsibility, because these are your children, and some of them are putting themselves in danger. You know, after you have a bunch of predators just out there, there is no strong judicial framework that will keep them away from your children. You know, there
Yes.
is nothing like a
registry or-
sex registry
Yeah.
where people who have been known or
Sex
have
offenders.
records of violating, you know, people, you know, sexually, are listed and identified, so that they do not come within certain perimeters. You know, they're not close to schools. They're not close
But
to
that
daycares.
itself
They're
would be
not.
so hard to do. Senosha has schools and daycares scattered so much around the place. That
No,
would be very hard.
it doesn't matter. But you have to do
And
it.
you know the person.
You
So at
ha-
least
you
if see
have
them
to
at the
red
school, you know
flag.
this person.
Yeah,
is
I'm not
supposed to be
saying.
a
I'm
sex
not
offender.
saying. You know, and I'm not really torn, but I have different thoughts on it, because for someone who, say for example, you know, who goes out with a woman, and then, you know, they get
Yeah.
into something, and then, you know, she says no, and he continues, and he's accused of rape or whatever, or charged with rape.
Yeah.
I'm not saying for someone like that to plaster the person all over the place, but if you are a serial offender,
Yeah.
you should be red flagged, you should be
Yeah, because I
highlighted,
think
you should be.
children are particularly vulnerable, which
Yes.
is the problem. A child, for example, a woman might be raped. She could still say a man is stronger than a woman and better able to defend himself. Plus, you know, the public opinion when a woman comes out and say I've been raped, the public backlash could be negative. But a child is even worse.
Yeah.
The child cannot do anything. Nobody's going to be. The child cannot protect the child, and plus, you are forming the child's opinions.
Right.
You're helping to shape their opinions and attitudes about sex, relationship, men, women, from a very early age.
And what
when
we-
that child ends up being very, you know, they're living a kind of a negative life, if they end up being very promiscuous, being engaging in prostitution, or just having 20 children with 10 different men, or raping women, you know, raping women all over the place, or there are guys that you see giving the prostitutes are there, but there are men who are paying them, because those men, again, don't have the sense of what is right and wrong in a relationship. How do you maintain a good relationship? And unfortunately, the mothers who are often raising them are not helping the situation. But it really is worse to prey on a child, I think, than one of the worst things you can do, I think.
But one of the things that we have to highlight as well is that a lot of the people who perpetrate those sexual crimes are victims themselves, or were victims themselves. So it's a cycle, and it does not stop until we address it, until we go into their psyche and, you know, to address their thinking,
Yeah.
how their minds were shaped growing up. Because a lot of the time, yes, you blame them because as adults they have responsibilities,
and
you know, they make choices. But their socialization has a very big part to play in
but
what they have ended up being.
If you look at, for example, you kill somebody, there's an option of having you, let's say, having you executed, put in prison for life, or there's a third option where you're not put in prison for life, but you put under psychiatric care. Because they recognize that the reason you kill somebody, not a crime of passion, but you're doing these things because you have a mental defect. Maybe it's a physical defect in your brain, maybe it's a mental defect based on how you're brought up, etc., chemical imbalances or whatever. The same way, I think people who are child molesters need to be taken and not just said, okay, actually sentence you to 5 years in jail and stay there, and if after 5 years you're out and you could just go roam about and rape another child.
No
whatever,
rehabilitation,
right?
yeah.
That person should be given special psychiatric care. You cannot just, and even when they come out, a lot of child molesters continue to be child molesters. It's what they know.
But it's part of the psyche. It's not. It is,
because if this horrendous thing is, human beings adapt. This horrendous thing is done to you. The only way you can adapt and live a life and live and not kill yourself is to tell yourself that this is not a bad thing, it's a good thing. So you tell yourself it's a good thing. So if it's a good thing, then you go ahead and do it to the children. So then trying to tell them it's bad is making them hate themselves for having gone through it and not being able to defend themselves and understand what's going on. This thing is so convoluted. I mean, it's not a conversation. Yeah. It's just something that it needs to be taken into account, and they need to be given help. At the same time, you need to make them understand the gravity of what they're doing and take them away from society and away from harming other children.
Yeah, it's very painful. You're watching The Press Club. I'm here with Maria Fontenelle. Stay with us. When we come back, we talk about St. Lucia Jazz. We talk about the Freedom Bay Project. Also, we have lost two stalwarts in media. We'll discuss their passings. Stay tuned to the program.